From the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Friday, February 28th. President Donald Trump's first month in office has sparked an uproar throughout the Pacific Northwest. People are protesting on a near-weekly basis and filling town halls with members of Congress. But in a state known for protests, the recent uprising feels different. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Bryce Dole.
I'm OPB General Assignment reporter Joni Auden-Land.
I'm OPB's health reporter Amelia Templeton.
Joni and Amelia, thank you for joining us. Each of you attended town halls with members of Oregon's congressional delegation in the past week. Joni, you went to the town of Rockaway Beach on the Oregon coast. Amelia, you went to Benson High School in Portland. I'd like to ask each of you, just describe for us, using just one word, what these town halls felt like. Joni, we'll start with you.
Ooh, nervous. Kind of like you're waiting on the results of a health test and you're afraid of what's going to happen.
Frustrangry, like frustrated and angry, I would say, at a boiling point.
I like that. Frustrangry, I think, should be in the dictionary from now on. Joni, tell us a little bit about this town hall in Rockaway Beach with Senator Jeff Merkley and Representative Suzanne Bonamici. First off, thank you for going to it.
Thanks. It was a very long, wet drive, but pretty, you know.
Tell us a little bit about it. Where is Rockaway Beach, and describe the scene when you arrived?
Like you said, Rockaway Beach is on the Oregon coast in Tillamook County. It's kind of a quintessential Oregon coastal town. Lots of seafood, lots of coastal views. Home of the original Pronto pup, so kind of an Oregon legend there. It is, yeah. And it kind of politically is really interesting. It's a very purple area, Tillamook County is. It voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, but has gone for Donald Trump in the past 3 presidential elections, all by very slim margins. So that kind of created for an interesting atmosphere at this town hall, which was in Neahkani High School, this kind of small high school gym. Lots of mostly older, white people there, which I think caught the eye of a lot of people who were, maybe a little younger. There were some signs, but kind of what I noticed is just how packed it was. I mean, I think there were maybe 500 people at this town hall, which for an area of that size is quite unusual. I think people were saying that previous town halls had not drawn that kind of crowd.
And it drew crowd from across the Oregon coast, right? Tell us a little bit about the people who you interviewed on Saturday. Who was there, and what did you hear from them?
I think it's fair to say that, people were coming in from all over the coast. I spoke to one person named Casey Henley. She lives in Manzanita, and she came to the town hall kind of hoping for some kind of plan from the Democrats, specifically Jeff Merkley and Suzanne Bonamici, and she wanted solid information about what's going on right now.
I've never seen anything like this happen before, and I know that there's a lot of narratives getting pushed, and I really am just trying to find as much truth to each side as I can. Yeah,
and I think there's a sentiment that I heard from a lot of people. I also spoke to Eric Smith. He lives in Bay City, which is really close to Rockaway Beach. He's a registered Republican, but said he voted for Kamala Harris. In particular, he seemed concerned with how sudden the government has been laying off federal employees, saying that, he's not against necessarily restructuring the federal government, but the sudden way they went about it, he's not a fan of that.
I will say there needs to be some upset done at the federal level and possibly even the state of Oregon. And maybe this is what it needs to do, but the approach is way incorrect. Bottom line, you just do not treat people this way.
And what did Senator Merkley and Representative Bonamici have to say?
Well, like I said, people wanted some sort of plan from them, but Merkley and Bonamici were kind of scant on details. They had a lot more to say about what other voters could do, typical things, calling your representatives, donating to a political organization, getting out on the streets, making your voice heard. But some people got frustrated. That was not the kind of specific plan of attack they were hoping to hear at the point. And at one point, this guy named Dennis Becker from Tillamook, he gets up and he asks why he hasn't heard more from Democrats since Trump took office for the second time.
I have not heard one thing about the Democratic Party, leadership really vocally, publicly pushing back. And I'd like you to comment on that, please.
Yeah, and Bryce, that was the loudest the audience got all day. And Merkley, in response, said that it was because Democrats aren't popping up on social media algorithms. That's why you might not be hearing the efforts they're doing. But I think it's fair to say that answer fell kind of flat with some of the audience.
It kind of seems that some of that dissatisfaction is something that we've been hearing a lot in the last couple of weeks in regards to the Democratic Party, and we'll dig into that some more later. And it really seems that there isn't just one cause that's driving this moment, right? In the past, Oregon and Portland in particular has been known for these protests and political activity around things like police brutality in response to the murder of George Floyd, protests against the Iraq War, protests around climate change. But I feel like what is so different now is that people are reacting to just an onslaught of new policies happening at this rapid clip, from immigration to tariffs to the Trump administration's foreign policy decisions and ideas to these mass firings of these federal employees. And people are obviously honing in on Elon Musk, the billionaire who is leading this government cost-cutting initiative called the Department of Government Efficiency. So it seems that people are just pushing back basically against anything and everything that the White House is doing.
Yeah, I think people were kind of ran the gamut in terms of the types of topics they were concerned about. I mean, I heard people asking questions about the Supreme Court, about cuts to agriculture research stations, cuts to NOAA, just all kinds of different topics. But it's funny that this is kind of coming by surprise that Elon Musk was mentioned by far more than Donald Trump at this town hall. I mean, he in particular seems that have really caught the ire of a lot of people for the role he is playing in the federal government, or I guess I should say the shrinking of the federal government.
Right. I spoke with Representative Val Hoyle and Senator Ron Wyden over the past week about these recent protests, these packed town halls, and each of them basically said this moment feels, and I hate this word, it's overused, unprecedented in its response, both in terms of the amount of complaints they're hearing and how people are responding. Representative Hoyle said that she's hearing from more people than ever before, and that these firings have really been on people's minds.
Anybody rational wants government efficiency and to cut waste. And I, for one, am willing to lean into that. That's not what's happening. They are cutting things that are absolutely essential.
And I think one thing that's really striking people in like local communities especially is, these firings. We're talking about people who have been fired from the Forest Service who fight wildfires. Our colleague April Ehrlich has done a lot of great reporting about this, and also these looming cuts at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And these are some of the workers who, again, they fight fires, they forecast the weather, which is critical for, farming and ranching communities, fishermen, and she and Wyden each kind of emphasize these cuts are really starting to impact communities. And we should also note that Hoyle was previously a part of that congressional caucus that is supposed to basically be working in tandem with the Department of Government Efficiency. And that's, again, the initiative that Elon Musk is leading to shrink the federal government. And Hoyle was just one of a few Democrats who joined it, but had actually left that post because of her concerns about Musk and the way that the cuts were playing out. So, Amelia, let's turn to you. You focus on healthcare for OPB. Why did you attend this town hall in Portland?
Well, since January, I have been sort of tracking the debate around the budget process this year in Congress. And the sort of first big piece of legislation everybody's been expecting is some sort of bill that would attempt to extend and pay for the tax cuts that Trump pursued during his last administration. People in the healthcare world have believed that meant that cuts to the Medicaid program were extremely likely, simply because of the way the math works out. So I was actually at this town hall to see if the public has started thinking about the potential for not just sort of these executive orders and some of the high-profile things that have been happening, but Congress taking action on some pretty core public benefit programs that, roughly a third of Oregonians rely on for their health insurance. I will say, I heard a little bit about Medicaid, but the subjects that came up were so similar to what Joni described in Rockaway Beach. There was just a tremendous amount of concern about the sort of undefined role that Elon Musk is playing in the government. Lots of concern about the firings of federal workers. A lot of parallels for sure.
Yeah, it kind of seemed in listening to some of the recordings that you made at the at this town hall that the tone of this town hall was just kind of different from the one in Rockaway Beach. Can you just describe a little bit about just what happened?
Yeah, I was also, I've covered Portland City Council. I've covered events in the city for a long time. So I was just really curious what the tone was going to be like. I've been at a lot of these big protests we've had in the past.
Right.
And things have seemed pretty quiet to me in Portland, frankly, compared to historically how people have responded, and compared to even the last time that Trump was elected. There were a lot of grayer heads in this audience. The town hall was absolutely packed. I think it was maybe 1,000 people, one of the largest crowds I've seen in a long time. And there was just an air of just incredible intensity, incredible frustration, and incredible anger. People kind of asked their questions. Everybody had like a lottery ticket. And so people were rapid fire asking Bonamici questions. She was sort of fielding them as best as she could. And then eventually the sort of patience, I think, sort of like ran out or boiled over. And there was this confrontation and this kind of call that started in the audience, and people started shouting. And we can take a listen.
What's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan?
Listen, I explained what we're doing. We are in the minority, so we're working hard to get the...
Do something else.
I understand that.
And that actually ended with, Bonamici sort of trying to give an explanation for the separation of powers, the role that Congress plays, her position in the minority, and saying, look, we don't have standing to sue the administration. We're doing what we can. And at that point, somebody else stood up and shouted, if they break the rules, you break the rules. And that got a lot of applause. I will say, I don't necessarily think that everybody in that audience was calling for a sort of if they break the rules, you break the rules approach. But I did hear this sense of frustration that the Democrats have not been able to command attention or even kind of match the theatrics and the public,
Right.
The public theater that the Republican majority has really.
Yeah. And this kind of seems to be some of the pushback that a lot of the Democrats are facing, right? That the party is being caught in some ways flat-footed as the Trump administration is going all out, basically throwing anything that they want to and can up against the wall just to see what sticks, knowing that basically some things might not make it through the courts, but other things might, go through. Basically the plan seems to be to overwhelm the opposition however they can. But Republicans also have faced some pushback, right, at some of these town halls. In Oregon, there's just one Republican member of Congress, and that's Representative Cliff Bentz. He represents rural Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon, and recently his town halls in places like LeGrand and Baker City, they've also been pretty packed. OPB's Dave Miller asked Bentz about this on Think Out Loud this week, and Bentz kind of insisted that the Trump administration, it's not stepping over the line and superseding Congress, which is supposed to be a check on the executive branch.
So I'll guarantee you that we are not being ignored. I guarantee it. I would like to know more about what's going to happen that the executive branch is going to do sooner than has been the case.
And Bentz went on to say that he supports the administration's efforts to slash government spending, but he acknowledged also that this is like a big and difficult task.
I support trying to get spending under control, and I'm happy to see the administration trying to do something about it. It's really, really, really hard. And so the approach they're using may be pushing the envelope. The court will call out whether or not it's constitutional.
Yeah, he essentially said, I'm confident we're not being ignored because they will need Congress to come back and enact laws to make permanent many of the changes that they're pursuing. And, I'm a Republican. We plan on doing that in concert with the executive branch. This week we saw sort of the first indication of what I think some of that legislation might look like. Republicans in the House, with President Trump's support, passed a blueprint for their budget bill. Some of the very big news in that bill is that it would require $880 billion in savings or cuts over 10 years, coming from a specific committee in Congress, which is essentially the committee that oversees Medicaid. That's the sort of the largest program under the Energy and Commerce Committee. So Dave Miller sort of pressed Bentz, who sits on that committee, as to what would those cuts look like? What's really on the table in terms of changes to the Medicaid program, which, in Oregon, we have really been all in on using Medicaid to reduce the uninsured rate, to extend health insurance to as many people as we can. It's also kind of a cornerstone of how hospitals, clinics, providers pay the bills. Fewer uninsured people means generally better finances for hospitals, particularly in parts of the state like Bentz's district, where you have rural communities that are even more heavily reliant on that government insurance program. Bentz said we're looking at Medicaid work requirements, and he also indicated there could be other cuts to the program to people who he said either don't deserve to be on Medicaid or aren't part of the original intent of who the program would cover. Dave really pressed to get clarity on that, and it got pretty heated. And in the end, Bentz said that he's unlikely to support legislation that would significantly reduce the Medicaid rolls here in Oregon, but essentially that we'll need to come back and revisit that conversation with him when the actual details of this proposal from the Republicans are clear.
Amelia and Joni, what was your sense from your reporting just about what people are thinking about when they're thinking about the future and the next couple of years with the Trump administration right now? What did it seem that people wanted who were at these town halls? Joni, we'll start with you.
I think there's a lot of fear about the immediate future. I mean, people don't know what's the next month is going to bring, let alone the next 4 years. I think there's a lot of concern about people potentially losing their jobs, potentially losing access to services from the federal government that they've come to rely on, whether that be Medicaid or Forest Service opportunities or, NOAA agriculture stations, things that you kind of just take as part of your life, and suddenly you don't know if they're going to be there in the near future. So I think people are just wanting some clarity from both political parties as to what's happening and what they can expect.
Yeah, and I think I heard something essentially that a lot of people, at least here in Portland, a lot of Democrats here in Portland, bought into the idea that in the run-up to the November election, party leadership were leaning on, which is that a second Trump presidency is not just a sort of political loss for the Democratic Party, it's also a threat to democracy itself. I think people took that message to heart, and now they feel like the Democrats are not behaving in a way as if democracy itself is threatened, and they're angry about that. You essentially told us this is a critical moment for not just politically the United States, but for our form of government. So now step up and act like it. We're in this very closely divided moment. We have been for a long time, where most elections at the national level are roughly 50-50 and go to one party or the other. And I think the other thing I heard from Democrats was they want to see the Democrats acting not like a weak party in the minority, but a force to be reckoned with that represents about 50% of the country. And they're just not seeing that.
Well, Joni and Amelia, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This week's episode was produced by Andrew Thien, and our audio engineer is Nalene Silva. Our music comes from Audio Network. In these uncertain times, we are certain that you have questions about local politics. Maybe we can answer them. We would love to hear from you. Email us at opbpoliticsnow@opb.org. We'll be back next week with more political news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, you can find all of OPB's reporting at opb.org. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening.